Hello, everyone, and welcome to this time with Guildmaster Gaming. Today we have a writer-director. I want to make sure I do this right now. Markian Tarasiuk and
Yes,
his film Hunting Matthew Nichols. So, Markian, please tell us about your film and about yourself.
excellent. So yes, uh, my name is Markian Tarasiuk. I'm the director of Hunting Matthew Nichols. It's like we were talking in the pre-interview here. It's a hard movie to kind of describe and um, talk about. But what I do describe it as it's a true crime horror documentary that follows Tara Nichols searching for her brother Matthew, who went missing on Vancouver Island in Canada, in British Columbia, 23 years ago now at this point. And it's basically her search to find out what happened to him through a very Netflix true crime documentary format. So it's her journey emotionally, but also physically, in terms of just going out, because 23 years ago her brother went missing with a friend, Jordan Reimer, and it's a cold case. Nobody knows what happened to him 23 years ago. So it's kind of her search for answers and all the events that unfold from there in the movie. So yeah, and just to give you a little bit about myself, I'm a Ukrainian Canadian director, mostly an actor actually. So this is my feature debut. So I've kind of my career has taken me through film and television through the last 10 years on screen. So now I've uh, stepped into the director's chair on this feature film, and super excited about that fact. And Yeah, it's just been exciting to start sharing this film with the world. And we premiered last Saturday at the Newport Beach Film Festival, and are going to be at Film Quest. We were also at Nightmares in Columbus this last weekend as well too. So, but the upcoming screening is at Film Quest in Provo, Utah, this upcoming Saturday at 8 p.m. And then we're off to other film festivals as well too. So we're kind of just starting our film festival circuit right now and starting to share the film with the world, which is really exciting.
So I got to ask, are you going to be able to make it to Film Quest?
I am going to be there. Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
we'll be
yeah.
able to meet in person then. Uh,
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes.
So my first question I have to ask, just because I was kind of looking at this going, this is kind of an interesting setup. You play a role and you were nominated for Best Supporting Actor,
Yeah.
but you play yourself, and as everybody in the film does with their names. But I got to ask, what there had to be a particular challenge of being the director, playing a role as a director.
Yeah, I don't recommend it to a lot of people, especially on their first one, to involve themselves as an actor within the film itself. But actually, that idea came through our movie trying to really see how far we can blur the lines of reality with the audience, right? So originally my part, like you just mentioned, I am playing myself as the director in the movie. um, and that part was originally two characters in the film that we had on early drafts of the script. And with talking to my writer, Sean Harris Oliver, we started to play with the fact of, like, okay, if we're going to go for this idea that is pushing this envelope in terms of the whole what is real, what is not, because that's what our film really tries to do. um, that idea just came from us talking about that and being like, okay, what happens if we put myself in the film as myself? uh, because again, it's pushing that idea that we're trying to see how far we can blur the lines of reality. So Ryan McDonald, who plays the cameraman, is also a character, and that's Ryan McDonald in the movie itself. um so it was just came from that idea of, like, let's have a little bit more fun with this. Let's involve myself on screen as well too. Because I get to sell this as a real documentary to people, which I think is just a fun idea to play with. So it was really difficult, kind of, to answer your question in that regard. It was a lot of, Yeah, it was just I'd be directing the piece and the film, but I'd also be in it. So basically, by day 12 of shooting, I think I was losing my mind a little bit because it was a lot to kind of handle and to focus on my acting work and also direct myself was a challenge, but it was a fun, welcome challenge that at the end of the day, I think has a great payoff in the movie for audiences, and was fun to also just be involved and see the movie through two lenses, which is the director itself, behind the camera, but also the director on screen as well too. So yeah, it was a bit of a excuse my French here, it's a bit of a mind fuck that I went through. But yeah, but I made it through and I pushed through.
Well, that was an interesting twist, when you kind of see it, knowing the dynamics of filmmaking. That's the reason why I had to ask. But let's talk now more about the film. Uh, so you were the co-writer along with this. So what was your inspiration? You mentioned Netflix, but what was your inspiration for the storyline of Honey Matthew Nichols?
Yeah, I mean a few things. Number one, I'm just such a big horror fan, and I think found footage, those movies, and my influences on that, especially the Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, like I just like those movies, and a bit of the not found footage, but The Ring as well too. These were movies that just stood out to me so much as a young person and as a kid, and they stuck with me so much from a horror perspective because, again, to that line of reality, I think added a sense of fear to me as a kid because I didn't know what to believe, and I thought that was just a really fun idea that we've not that we've got away from it. I think there are other kind of horror, found footage films or movies that are coming out these days, but they're a bit more. It's a bit more difficult to try to sell this as being like a real thing. And so I was trying to answer the question to myself when we were developing the project: what is the format and the function of a found footage film today that would be able to trick me? And so, in saying that, the inspiration came from during COVID. I was watching a documentary, and it was on Netflix. And I'm a huge, again, documentary fan in terms of especially true crime. I swear on Netflix, there's a new murder true crime one every week in the top 10 now. And so it's really popular and popular with myself. And I was watching, I forget which one, and I shouldn't name it, but there was a documentary that the events of it were really bizarre and the circumstances were pretty crazy, and the facts, and I was watching this documentary being like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, this is an insane true story. And I googled the case after watching, and actually what had turned out to be the truth was that the interviewees and all the subjects came out against the documentary, and they said that they were misrepresented, they were edited, that their words were chopped up, and that the storyline that the documentarians were presenting was not really reality. And I felt a little hoodwinked. I felt lied to. I was like, "Oh, what? This can't be. You're not allowed to do that, right?" And that was my light bulb moment because I was like, this could have been completely made up what I was watching, but because it was presented in this Netflix true crime, I call it like prestige documentary, highly produced. Um, because it was presented in that way, I didn't question it for a second, right? So I was like, okay, what if we build up something from the ground up and just create that from scratch and present it as if it's real. And then on top of that, in developing it too, I was like, what's the most exciting thing that could happen in a documentary? And I think we saw it happen with the Jinx on Netflix, or sorry, on HBO, where the killer admits to the murder, or would you face the killer, face the monster? That kind of seems like the most entertaining ending to a documentary possible. So let's just do that, right? So that's what our film tries to do. So I think those kind of inspirations, that's where this idea came from. And on top of that, just the last part of that question would be, I'm I'm from Winnipeg in Canada originally, but I lived 12 years in Vancouver, and so I knew that from the start I wanted to make this a local story to Vancouver, but it is Vancouver Island because it's not represented a lot in film. And if Vancouver or the island is being used to shoot, it's usually being used to shoot as like a different location, right? Like that's just, we have this complex up in Canada where we'd never set our stuff in Canada. So that was always important to me. And I wanted to explore the area because I find that the area and the forest and the island is a character in of itself in the film. Um, but on top of that, Vancouver Island is actually known as one of the most supernatural places on Earth. That's Victoria is one of the most haunted cities in the world. Apparently, I haven't had paranormal experiences there, but actually, I did have one. But we can talk about that in a bit. But that was also it too. That I wanted to set it in Vancouver, on Vancouver Island because of all the lore that does exist and the weird stuff that happens up there. Vancouver Island is beautiful, but it is a bizarre place. It feels so remote, and there are communities up there that are known to be a bit off. So I knew that as a local. So again, too, that now you see kind of like the mishmash of where all these ideas start coming from, in terms of influences. And so I knew I wanted to make it a missing persons case. And then that was where all these kind of ideas were swirling from. And then, yeah, working with my writer, Sean Harris Oliver, this kind of just started coming from all those discussions and all those ideas floating around. And he did a wonderful job putting, I think, a really compelling story together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot that you've put in there. It sounds like a lot of personal kind of stuff you've worked through. Uh,
Yeah.
so you mentioned right now that you're just starting your film festival runs, but we'll get to that in a moment. But I just kind of want to tie in with that. This is a very self-contained one-shot movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but have you thought about the idea of taking the original case of that's the movie is based on and turning it into a story?
Um, that the original case is based on what? Sorry, what do
So
you?
the case of Matthew Nichols,
Yeah.
you actually tell his story from 23 years ago. Have you thought about doing something along those lines?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Just like in terms of like a sequel or exploring something else.
Yeah, kind of go back to this is what really happened to him and show it from his
Yeah.
point of view.
Yeah, I mean that's the first time I've heard that idea presented to me. So that's super fun. I haven't thought about that. So no, you're bringing this up for the first time. I've legit never considered, doing that story from. But I mean, look, if the movie does really well, that's, yeah, I gotta bring that to Sean now. Dan, that's that.
Credits.
Credits, I know, credits, get a writing credit on there for that idea. But no, I haven't explored, but I think that would be really interesting. Of course, I don't like to spoil a lot about the movie and be very vague on purpose and confusing about it, but at the end something does happen where somebody else is, something happens to them. So we've talked about exploring what exactly that ending is and who exactly, these people are, that we find. So that's been explored, but no, we haven't talked about the like Matthew's perspective, which I think would be, yeah, that'd be cool to know exactly what happened. Yeah. And in the sequel, we've talked about, for ideas, we do want to open up more of the, or explore more of the notion of what happened to him and exactly, yeah, what the circumstances are. So hopefully we get that opportunity to do so. That would be a lot of fun.
Now we were talking earlier, and you mentioned you guys are having a little bit of fun with the aftermarket, you might say, of the movie, with
Yeah.
what you're doing on social media and other areas. Would you like to share some of that and let people know how they can actually join into, I guess you could say, the hunt for Matthew Nichols?
Yes. I think that's the perfect way to describe it is the hunt. And that's how we are describing it. And yeah, so again, because our movie plays with that line of reality, and we try to play that as close to home as possible. The same thing is happening with our social media online. We're trying to see, and it's a bit of an experiment. And it's the Blair Witch is famous for their marketing campaign and for building up what I call like the mythology or the lore of the film itself. And so we're attempting to do that with this movie to emulate a bit of what they did, in '99 with the internet. And I think the version of that today is a bit of misinformation and disinformation. I think that's really prevalent online already. And so we're having a bit of fun with misinformation, disinformation online, to make this as confusing as possible. Because I think there's like a sense of like I was talking about, um, when people don't know that it's real or not, that does add a sense of fear to the movie itself, especially as you're taking it and watching it, whether you don't know if this is real or not. So our marketing is trying to um, reflect that and have fun with it. And there is a ton of confusion online because we are presenting this as real, that people don't know. People keep asking me, is it real or is it not? And I just give the answer of, you just have to make your own call when you watch the movie of what's real or not. So that's kind of where we're landing. And I posted a photo online of me in the hospital, and there's been a big question of ethics behind that. um, because the events in the movie are lead me to that place. I don't think that's a spoiler because that's pretty out there. But actually, this kind of adds to my whole, what we're doing here is an outlet actually picked up that I was injured on set, and so the news reported on it without us prompting anything. It wasn't me going out and saying like, hey, can you plant this fake story? It's been picked up by itself. And that's just an example to me of like, yeah, this is where we're living at this point of like, no one verified it with me. People just write about it. People just talk about it. And the kind of the I don't want to use the word lie, but the lie spreads really, really quickly. And that's where we find ourselves in, and we're having a lot of fun with it. So if the audience is watching this and interested in what I'm talking about in the movie, I have been encouraging everybody to get in on it and to add to the mythology, add to the lore, and join in the fun, because I do find it a lot of fun, adding to the confusion of everyone surrounding this movie. And hopefully it gains a lot more interest with our audience, and people do appreciate it at the end of the day, about what we're doing. Because yeah, I just use the word fun just because it is to me. It's pretty silly.
So where can they join on that?
So yeah, you can hop online on our socials. We're on all the major social medias at Hunting Matthew Nichols, and also go to huntingmatthewnichols.com is our kind of hub for everything, where you'll get information, and there'll be a lot more coming out in terms of behind the scenes materials, but also case evidence files you can look through. There'll be supplementary videos and all this fun stuff that's, we're kind of holding out because we want to gain more of a following before we release a lot of the more of the guerrilla marketing stuff that we have created. But yeah, so check out our website and kind of follow along, because there's a whole, I call it kind of a whole sub narrative about to start with this film, which is yeah, going to be very interesting to see the reception to that.
That does sound like it's a lot of fun. I will admit I have seen that on another film they did too, a few years ago, that turned out to be quite a fun aspect of building, like you say, the mythology around the story.
Yeah. I mean, I think audiences appreciate it. I think we saw a lot of it with Long Legs this past summer. With that film, they did that whole the what was it, the birthday party murders website, all of their weird Nicolas Cage with the phone number, with the stuff online, the videos, and it was really cryptic. And at the end of the day, it's look, even with Long Legs, we all knew it was a movie. We didn't, there was no pretense like we're doing, but people engaged with it. And people found it fun. I engage with it because I really appreciate that stuff when marketing teams go that route with films, because it gets to engage me more with the story and the characters before I enter the theater. And that to me is the best way to build story, to build marketing, and get me interested as an audience member. So that's what we're going to attempt to do here.
Kind of creating your own game world. It's kind of,
Exactly.
and people that know me, I have nothing to do with games. Ignore the shelves.
Nothing at all. Nothing.
No, so you're just starting out in your festival run, like we mentioned. This is like your third festival coming up. So
Yeah.
I'm I'm not thinking that you probably have heard a lot about distribution, but have there been any whispers at all?
Yeah, I'm not really allowed to talk about it.
I
There's, yes.
understand. But that
But
tells me
no,
there's
we
been whispers, and we can kind of go at that, that there's a possibility uh, that you're getting picked up so people can enjoy this multiple times after the circuit.
yeah, I think making indie film is hard, and we're again on that journey right now of getting distribution and getting this out to the masses. I think though the challenge with our film is just who's the right partner, because of all the things I talked about, with the marketing. We're a small movie. We're building up an audience. We don't have star power. We're just in the midst of like figuring out and very carefully trying to curate who we partner with on this film, because I want them to believe in it as much as I do, just in terms of I think what it can accomplish and what audiences where they take it in, I think is very important too, of like which platform and where. So yeah, we're just in the midst of those conversations and trying to figure out where it lands. But yeah, follow along to see our journey of this whole
Yep.
thing.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure that will probably also be coming on the Hunting Matthew Nichols webpage.
Yes, yeah. All
Okay.
updates with distribution will be online on our website. There's also a newsletter that you can sign up on our website that we send more direct updates to, and more fleshed out stuff and extra content, actually, because we appreciate those people who do sign up and take the time to do that and read their inbox. So yeah, the more fun content is coming out on the inbox, as well as kind of announcements of where people will be able to watch this, and more film festivals in the future.
So we've talked about the inspiration of the film, where the film has gone, where it's going. Uh, I almost want to say it's almost like a LARPing, exercise of what you're doing on the outside. Um, I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah.
I don't know. I should maybe explain that, because I every so often I get people that don't recognize the acronyms. That's live action role playing, where they can actually be involved in creating the story with you. So let's kind of go back and talk about Markian.
Yeah.
Um, what was your inspiration early on to become a filmmaker?
Mm. I mean, the easy answer is, like, I started out in theater, actually. Like, so I think that early on in my life, the theater was my main driver. Um, and I loved movies. This was the thing, is this like I always thought I was just going to be a theater actor and do stage, because I took classes as a kid. I did plays professionally as a young teenager, and that's where my love of, I think, art and acting came from, was through the theater. And I always thought, oh, like this is what I'm going to do. And I didn't consider myself a film actor or a filmmaker at all. But as I started to grow up, I think my appreciation for film and movies started to grow, and I started realizing that the stories that I wanted to tell were made for the movies, I think. And so my career just started to shift a bit. And it's funny that this is my first feature film and it's done in this style, because when I was a teenager, I did a film class in high school, and all of my movies that I made for the entire term were mockumentaries, which was a really it's a funny thing to like look back on, but I think at that time I was also obsessed with The Office as like a television show, and that kind of like Parks and Rec and all, that whole even Borat. These were all things that I loved and I watched over and over and over again, in tandem with the horror stuff. So I think that's where my inspiration for this really came from, or like my love of this format and this genre came from, was those early influences, my high school experience. And then as I went to theater school for 3 years, after that I started to work in the film and television space, and I've just fallen more and more and more and more in love with movies and television since then, because I've been able to work on set as an actor. I've been very, very lucky in that regard, and I've just fallen in love with the creation of it. Getting on set, it really, really does feel like a circus when you do it. You know, I think that's why they call it a circus, where all the trailers are, because that's the true feeling of making movies, and the people I get to work with and the collaborators. And so in doing that for the last 10 years, I've wanted to, I think with directing, and as an actor, you're more of a tool. You know, you're there to serve somebody else's vision. And I wouldn't say that being an actor on set is collaborative. It can be to a certain extent, but I don't really feel like that most of the time, especially if you're on a huge show. You just come in for the day. You're just like, hello, they want you to read your lines and then get out of there, because they got to sign you up because they don't want to pay you any overtime. So that's been my experience. And so I was missing a little bit of that collaborative nature of that creation that I got into the industry for back when I was a teenager. I was missing that a little bit. So I think that's why I've gone down this route of directing. Um, you know, isn't so much for, you know, people love control and a vision and artistic, I got to do this, tell this story. I don't think like my motivation comes from that. It comes from just wanting to collaborate and create stories with other people. And I got to work with incredible artists on this movie and really witness their process and witness their artistry in a more with more of like a front seat you know, view, and then also give my suggestions, which is a lot of fun too, to give direction to people and see them actually excel and craft their artistry to a bit of like my preference, which is nice. So I guess there's a bit of the control part that I do like, but that's mostly, yeah, my journey with this all.
Okay. So we've talked about where you kind of came from. What, do you have any other projects that you can share with us that you're currently working on or that are kind of in the stages of moving forward?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but we did talk about that there is opportunity for more exploration and storytelling with Hunting Matthew Nichols. And one of our, you know, so we do have plans to actually, and the outlines and the scripts are there for number two and number three. So we do have two other narratives that are based off of kind of what we've done form wise with Hunting Matthew Nichols. Um, and so we are working on that, and we are, again, talking about the distribution thing. We are trying to package it as a bit of a franchise. um, when I say cart before the horse, of course, Hunting Matthew Nichols has to be successful first for us to do that. But I just love this narrative so much, and I think there's so much fun that we are having with the other films as well too. So we are kind of calling it the Hunting franchise with this, and again, too, that's only if the audience really, really loves it, and I hope they do with this movie. Aside from that, though, I am developing another project right now, which is a genre bending. I seem to love to create complex narratives that are really difficult to pull off. It seems to be my lane right now. But I'm developing, and there's out right now a movie that is, I describe it as a Hallmark thriller. Horror. I've worked a lot in the Hallmark space. Been those leads has been a lot of my work in the last 10 years, and I love that community and those fans. But so in all my experience in that, I was like, okay, what happens if the form of Hallmark and that kind of love story was genre bent and went into a horror land, where we start off in the Hallmark world and then shift into a very, very different place. So that's the project that I'm currently kind of focusing on and taking out right now.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of fun. A nice twist that with Hallmark. I was
Yeah.
running through some titles in my head. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to get in trouble with any of those franchises that they do.
Yes, and neither do I. So I don't know if they'll be particularly happy when I make it, but I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's just a lot of fun again too. I think that word is cheesy to use. It's like it's just fun, but I don't know this industry. That's why I got into it, was because it was just fun to me as a kid, and that's the kind of work I just want to create is fun stuff for people to watch and enjoy and be surprised about. And but at the same time, it's still all character based and narrative focused, and that's what I tried to do with Hunting Matthew Nichols. It was at the end of the day, this is a character story that focuses really on Tara and her journey with grief and loss. And that's the main theme of the film that kind of propels us forward through the whole movie. So I also like my stories and stuff always want to be focused on character, and the genre bending kind of is like the secondary thing to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So it sounds like you got a lot of stuff in the hopper of what you're working on, be it in support of this film with all the extracurricular activity you're doing with it, or as moving forward. So when you need to break away from all of the workload, what does Markian like to do for fun?
Man, I did it last night. I like to dance. That's like one thing that I like to do. I'm actually um, I am a Ukrainian dancer, or I was. I guess I am retired now. But I danced with the Rusalka, which is a dance group in Winnipeg. I danced with them for 4 years. I toured Ukraine as a Ukrainian dancer. So that's kind of like one of the ways, and I still work with that organization a lot in terms of projects and community. Uh, yeah, projects back in Winnipeg. I'm still very tied to that. So culturally, I love you know uh, dancing and my Ukrainian heritage and my Ukrainian side. So I like doing that. But outside of that, I'm a pretty easy guy. I take in a lot of movies. I watch a lot of shows. And then just I like going out and enjoying other art. I think is like part of it is I love museums, art galleries, and I think that's a could sound like a pretentious thing to say as a director. I like other art and I go to museums and galleries. But yeah, but it's true. It's true. Anytime I travel, I just gotta search like the number one museum in that city, and I that's the first thing I do and I go to. So that's kind of like how I decompress, I think, is taking in other people's art. And yeah, that's and I moved to Los Angeles a year and a half ago, and I'm still checking off like going down my list of galleries and like museums. So like whenever I have some free time, I just like search that up and be like, we're going there today. To Yeah, that's what I like doing in my spare time.
I think you'll find that that's not as uncommon as you think it may be.
I hope not. I don't know. I talk to people and they're like, "You like museums?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, they're the best. They're the best." And then I'm like, "Have you been to this one and this one?" And I talk to people in LA. I'm just like, "Have you been here and been here?" And a lot of people are like, "No, I haven't been there." I'm like, "You've lived here for your whole the last decade and you haven't gone to this place? Are you crazy?" So yeah. So maybe, but thank you. Maybe yeah, maybe you're right that it's not as uncommon
Yeah,
as
I've had a
other
few people saying,
places.
and I've had the similar experience here. I live in Salt Lake, and so many people I'll talk to and say, "Oh, there's this museum." They're going, "I've never heard of it." You know, it's like, wow.
Yeah, you're like,
You know,
what?
you're
Yeah, no,
talking to
no.
someone that say, "Oh, I'm into vintage cars." So have you been to the vintage car museum downtown? They go, "I didn't know we had one."
We got to get the word out about museums, right? We got to do more promotion on museums and make sure that people go out to them. I just find them. I don't know. There's something. My mom worked for Parks Canada, which is kind of like an actual park service growing
Mhm.
up. And so she was, in charge of a lot of these interpretive centers and museums and heritage sites and stuff. So as a kid, I was just exposed to that a lot, going and traveling across Canada. So I think that's where like it comes from, like museums and stuff. But I don't know, there's just so much joy I get from seeing old shit and learning about old shit. I don't know. It's just cool. It's just cool. It always feels like a time. They are time machines in a lot of ways, and so it feels like I get to go to another world for a while in museums. You know, maybe that's also like ties into like why I make movies. It's like you get to go somewhere else for a little bit and pretend to be in a different time or space. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what makes storytellers who they are.
I
Um,
think so.
so if someone came to you now and said, "Hey, I want to become a filmmaker,"
Mhm.
what advice would you give them?
You know, I think about all the advice that I got and trying to sift through it all right now in my mind to be like, okay, what's the thing that stands out the most to me in terms of that? Well, I think on a molecular level, like my in was theater, right? And theater school. And that kind of led me to getting an agent and that. But I think if you want to be a filmmaker and tell your own stories, I think, you know, and I think Steven Spielberg talks about this. He just says, like, grab a camera and go because we all have phones right now. And, you know, making a movie is really hard. So I think that's like a hard piece of advice because there's so many people you need to involve. There's so many moving parts to get a feature film made, especially. You know, but the end that you can do is like what I did as a teenager. And I think a lot of people are doing it with TikTok already and in Instagram. That's kind of where we shifted, is just start making things that you find enjoyable and on top of that surround yourself with like-minded people. I think, you know, to get to this point I didn't actually do any shorts, so I can't really talk about like making shorts with people because I haven't done it, and that's not from a place of like I just did a feature, I don't need to do shorts. I think shorts are amazing. I just never had an idea for a short that I really put a lot of stock in. I was passionate about this story at the end of the day. So I think that's what it is find out um what makes what lights your fire inside as like a storyteller first. Find that story, and then secondly find your community. And I was so lucky, we filmed this in Vancouver. This was the culmination of really like 12 years of connections, of contacts, of friends, um, to get this made. And that was just done through the community. So networking, going to events, going to class, just start surrounding yourself within the film community, I think is actually the most important thing, because you'll find those storytellers and those other artists like I have, and like I think every filmmaker has, that are like-minded, that want to create and hold on to those people dearly and create with them. So I think that's mostly it, is finding your in, surrounding yourself, finding a story that you're passionate about, and just going for it. Because filmmaking, you need help. It's not something you can do on your own. You can make a script, make an amazing script, but if you don't have the people around you to make it with you, it's just not going to happen. Um, and so I think that's kind of the most important thing, is just surrounding yourself, um, and also just not giving up. This is a hard industry, and there's ups and there's downs, and I've definitely had them. Um, so just keep going, because passion needs to drive every artist. I think that's the only way you can survive. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we've talked about, you know, your film. We talked a little bit about you. We've already mentioned where people can follow up with you and kind of see what's going on. So any final call out you'd like to do, or, you know, thank yous, or, you know, any final information you'd like to share?
Yeah. I mean, we're a small movie. Um, we're small, and we've been very lucky that some festival programmers have deemed our film worthy to be there. But truly, the movie doesn't exist without an audience. And so I know I can't say like go watch it here, go support us, because we're starting that whole thing. But I think with that, it's go to huntingmatthewnichols.com, follow along. We have the plans to hopefully be in a lot more festivals in the new year, and engage with us. Find me on Instagram. I'm at Mark Taras on Instagram. Find our movie on Instagram, and reach out. I'd love to chat, and I'd love to create this world with you. I think I'm speaking directly to the audience now. Of find me, and let's talk. This movie was such a labor of love, and I worked on it for 4 years, and all I want to do with it now is share it with people. And in doing so, let's have some fun. So please engage with us online, because the more audience members or followers online, I think it just like creates, the environment for this to be something really special, online, but also theatrically as well too. When we all share in an experience, and you pass along this movie to the next person, and tell them to, hey, I saw this crazy documentary. You got to watch it. Yeah, there's a lot of joy in that for me, and I think we've seen that so far. Where at our screenings, half of the people don't know what this is always walking into it. And in Newport on Saturday, we actually had two people walk out, who were very upset about what I just tried to do to them. As soon as our third act began, they were not having it. So it didn't make me sad. It kind of made me excited that they wanted to walk out of this one, because I think there's a lot of joy in the surprise of it. So if you do get involved, join in the surprise, pass it along to the next person, and have some fun with it, and then have a discussion with them after. So that's my call to action. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hunting Matthew Nichols is showing on the festival circuit right now, with possible distribution in the future, with a lot of other aspects happening online that you can join in with. A lot of fun. It is at FilmQuest was nominated, I believe, in 4 categories, including Best Found Footage. So, and yourself as Best Supporting Actor. So there's some good stuff going on there. I think you'll enjoy it. And I do think, from after I'm watching it myself, this is a type of film that you'd very much want to see it with an audience, with a group, because I could see where it very much would generate conversation between people going, what about, did you see?
Yeah.
There's a lot of little fun little twists and turns going on. So
Yeah.
please
I
get out.
think, yeah.
Yeah. So get out to the festivals, support the independent artists, the filmmakers at the festivals. I always tell people, get out and support independent creatives wherever you can. It's really where things are happening. A lot of fun stuff is coming out from the independent markets around the country, around the world. And we get a chance to see that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
I agree with you. I just wanted to say, and just like be like, yes, thanks, Dan, for having me on today. And thank you for saying that, because I think that's a big thing. Is right now there is studio, tiredness, I think, in the film world right now, and just a little bit tired of like what the big Hollywood things are doing. So to me, you just said it, the most exciting work is happening at the festivals and the independent level right now. And I do think we're in for a bit of an independent renaissance in the next 5 years here. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of great stuff going on. It's pretty amazing to watch. So thank you for joining with us for this conversation. If you like what we're doing, please like this, share it out. And if you really like it, subscribe if you would. That just helps us keep doing more and more. So thank you, Markian, for joining us. And until next time, we'll talk later.
Thank you so much.